All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to discuss updates in the fresh fruit and vegetable program. My name is Stephanie Stombach, and I manage the FFVP at the State Child Nutrition Office. So just wanted to remind everyone that this presentation is intended for schools currently participating in the FFVP. Others are welcome to join and learn more. But this won't be an in-depth FFVP training. And every fall, we have an FFVP training where we talk about the requirements in more detail. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box. And then we will save those for the end. And just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our website at a later time.
Q&A box.
And for the questions, please enter them into the Q&A box. All right, so this is our agenda for today's webinar. So first, we're going to discuss some changes to the reallocations process with FFVP funds and what that new process looks like. Then I'm going to talk about how to allocate labor in the program, as I've been receiving some questions on this, and we've created some guidelines in doing so. This includes both administrative and operational labor. Then we will discuss the labor documentation process for those who would like to claim labor in FFVP and how to go about doing that. And then we'll end with a discussion of school year 2026 FFVP applications and a refresher of those requirements when completing your applications. So before we move into topics, I just wanted to remind everyone of two reports that are in CNP Web that are helpful in tracking your fund usage and what was claimed each month for FFVP expenses. So the first one is the FFVP usage report, and you get here by going to the reports tab in CNP Web, then accounting reports, and then you'll see it listed as the second one down. So this report lists the allocations for each school. It gives the updated balance for each school participating in FFVP, and it helps to track fund usage each month. The second one is the FFVP monthly claim report. So this is a snapshot of each month's expenses, and it breaks it down into the various categories. So food, labor, and other for operational and administrative costs. It can also be helpful or can help identify if there was a mistake with claiming in a particular month, because you can go back and see what you had claimed. If maybe you think there was a discrepancy, this can kind of help you pinpoint any potential typos or anything. And this report is found under the reports tab and then claim reports. So let's get into the FFVP reallocations. And reallocation is really just another term for transferring funds from one school to another. And the whole purpose of doing this is to maximize our fund usage as a state, because it's less money that we are returning to USDA. And so if we have a school that maybe has excess funds, looking at transferring them to another school that might be able to use them. So that's why this is an option for schools. So as far as the reallocation process goes, I do this several times throughout the year. The first one is a mid-year review of fund usage, where I look at what schools have spent to date. I pull that FFVP usage report, and schools that have spent less than 40% of their funds by February or after the January claims have been paid, you'll receive an email from me if less than 40% funds have been used, and then I'm notified how much funds you plan to use, or if you're willing to give up any funds. And then I do a reallocation between the schools. So that's one example of when this process happens. Another situation is based on school request. If I find or if I'm emailed that a school is running low on funds, um, typically I do get some requests around this time. And so usually it's a within district transfer or outside of the district. And then I do get requests towards the end of the year because more schools are running out of their funds. So I tend to get those at the end of the school year as well. So with this new reallocations process that we have, and it's a result from our state audit that we had recently, we developed a new reallocations process to ensure that each FFVP school has a minimum allocation of $50 per student and not more than $75 per student. So this is a federal regulation that we have to follow. Um, so how we figure out the maximum and minimum allocation is we take the $50 per student, multiply that by enrollment, and then do the same thing for at $75 times enrollment, because that's the maximum that the school can have. So the enrollment is based on the ED 534 report. This is the report that I use for allocations each year. So for school year 2025, the school year that we're in, I used the ED 534 report from the previous year. Because with FFVP, you're applying in the year prior to receiving the grant. So just so that everyone knows where the enrollment numbers are coming from. So what exactly does this mean? It's helpful to have an example to go by. So let's say school A needs more funds. Maybe they serve 5 days a week. They offer prepackaged produce, so they're finding that they're using more of their money. So I'll take a look at enrollment. So the enrollment is 150 students, and this is based on the ED 534 report. So then we take 150 students times 75. So that gives us 11,250. So that means that that school cannot exceed more than 11,250 in FFVP funds. Now, school B, which is what I like to call our donating school, maybe they have a little more funds left over. They were slow to starting the program, and they have some funds that they could do away with. So I look up their enrollment. It's at 100 students based on the ED 534 report. So we take 100 times $50 and we get 5,000. So this school must have at least $5,000 in FFVP funds. They cannot go below that amount because then they would be below the $50 per student threshold. So this is the FFVP usage report. So if you are a school that requests additional funds or are what I call a donating school, after I complete the transfer, I will email you with the updated balances for the schools. And some people on this call likely have already received this type of email from me. So I will highlight the balance, and then the column that you always want to refer to is the October through September column, because that is because FFVP runs on a federal fiscal year, so the funding runs from October through September of the following school year. So here are some recommendations. So Maine DOE or really me, because I'm the one who will be doing the transfer. I will let you know the maximum amount I can give or take from a school, because this is something that we are tracking at the state level. You're welcome to do the math yourself, but I will check it first before doing any transfer, because it's something that we have to make sure, we're not going above or below that certain amount. So I would highly recommend to monitor your fund usage closely and refer to that usage report because that's really helpful. Whoever is placing your FFVP orders, make sure they aren't over or underspending, because we can't move funds as easily as in the past. So another way to kind of explain this is if one school in your district is underspending and they might have, say, an excess of $3,000 and another one is overspending, I might only be able to transfer 1,500 of that 3,000, even if they don't intend on using it. Also, because of the new process, there might be a longer turnaround time to complete the transfers, because more calculations have to be done and more number crunching. So just wanted to make people aware of this. And this is just more for you to be aware of, if you do have a request for a transfer in the future. And I always try my best to complete them in a timely manner. So now we're going to move into reimbursable costs, and really focus on labor because I've been getting a lot of questions on this. So we're going to focus on that a little more than the other costs. So just a reminder that the majority of funds must be used for fruits and vegetables. However, the program does allow other non-food costs to be reimbursed, such as labor and supplies. And here on the screen are examples of operational costs. Labor is a part of that can be claimed in the program. And then on the right-hand side, the program does allow administrative costs to be claimed, and labor is part of that, but it is limited to less than 10% of the total funding amount. So what qualifies as operational labor versus administrative labor? So these are definitions from the FFVP handbook. If anyone isn't familiar with the handbook, I would definitely recommend downloading it from our website. It's really helpful. So for operational labor, this includes salaries and fringe benefits for washing and chopping, preparing trays, cleanup, all of those tasks for running the program, preparing, serving, distributing. And then administrative labor is salaries and benefits for, more of your administrative tasks like filing the claim, putting together some financial reports, writing the menu, coordinating nutrition promotion activities. So that might help in terms of what you could claim for operational versus administrative labor. And then when it comes to claiming these expenses as part of the monthly claim process, you will enter your operating and administrative costs in the different categories. So you have operating and administrative costs, administrative equipment. If you are approved for a large equipment purchase, you would put that under administrative costs, and that is also part of the 10% limit. And normally this might happen towards the end of the year, is if you happen to go over that 10% admin cost, there will be an error message. So that is an edit check we have in the system. And then if you are up for an administrative review, we look at the backup documentation to support your claim for FFVP. So I've been receiving a lot more questions on how to allocate labor in the program, how much is reasonable, how much, um, what am I allowed to do? So we've created some guidelines for allocating labor, and specifically for operational labor because there isn't a um, requirement on this or a minimum like there is for administrative labor. So for operational labor, and if you choose to claim labor, because again, it's not required, um, for operational labor, no more than 25% of the total allocation can be used towards your operational labor cost. Um, and we feel like this is reasonable given that some schools do use their funding to bring someone in to do FFVP or have a staff person kind of be the point person um, for this program. And then for administrative labor, again, no more than 10% can be used towards admin labor. And then, of course, if you were to purchase large equipment, that would be part of the 10% as well. And we have an edit check in the system. So if deciding to allocate labor in the program, there is a documentation process, and this is to make sure that it's done accurately and supports the time that is claimed in the program. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. Um, so the first one is conducting a time study for that person who's completing FFVP tasks. It can be based on an average amount of time calculated, and then the food service director um, would then sign just an annual certification, um, and then just keep it for your files so that during if you get audited, that you have that documentation, because um, this was also found during an audit that a district had received. And so some auditors might look for that information. So that's another reason why we're giving a heads up about that. Um, if there are any changes, then you can modify um, that average amount of time. And then another way is if a percentage of staff time is used, there must be documentation to support how that figure was determined. So if you have a 5-hour position and 1 hour is spent on FFVP per day, as long as you have that backup documentation, that would justify 20% of their time going towards labor. And if you need, some help or guidance in how to go about doing this, feel free to email me or call me. So moving into the school year 26 FFVP applications, because that deadline is right around the corner. And I do realize that some schools might have already submitted their application or are in the process, so you might have already completed it before today. But the applications are completed in CNP Web, and they are due Friday, April 25th. And a completed application has the signature page uploaded, and it must be in pending approval status. Once it's in pending approval status, everything is all set on the district end, and then the next step is for us to approve. So just a quick refresher for how the program works. If you are working on your application or intend to submit an application, so fresh fruits and vegetables have to be available during the school day to all enrolled students. So it has to be served outside of breakfast and lunch times. And the school really has flexibility as to when, where, and how to implement the program. And this is included in your annual application. And if you are a returning school or if you've participated in the past, you can just update the application as needed. And it is a reimbursement program so you report your expenses each month, and then you receive a separate reimbursement from your breakfast and lunch program. And then here are more of the basics for what can I serve, when and where to serve. So as far as what goes, as the name implies, fresh fruits and vegetables only, no fruit leather, no craisins or other dried fruit. It has to be produce in its most natural state. Um, for vegetables, you can offer a dip and claim a dip to help maybe get kids excited about eating vegetables. And then whole, prepackaged, or pre-cut produce are all totally fine to offer for the program. And really, variety is key because one of the goals of the program is to expose kids to new and different foods. So the more variety that can be offered, the better. When and where to serve. So again, has to be outside of breakfast and lunch times because it would be double dipping to do both FFVP at the same time as lunch, because you do get a separate reimbursement. And then, really, as far, the sky is the limit as far as where you want to serve. Some schools do carts in the hallway because maybe that works easier for larger schools, and on different floors. And then delivery to the classroom is also very common. And then some other schools will offer it during a locker break or after phys ed class because it's a nice kind of way to um, supplement nutrition and physical activity or complement each other. And then as far as the minimum required days to offer FFVP, the minimum is 2 days per week, and more often is encouraged if possible because kids get accustomed to having this program every day. And it can also help you go through your funds a bit more timely. And then some school selection reminders. So just in terms of getting awarded for next school year. So it must be a school with grades pre-K through 8 or any combination of these grades. We do have some, uh, middle schools that participate and K-12 schools where only the elementary kids are participating. And um, based on federal requirements, priority is given to schools with the highest free and reduced percent. To give you an idea, this past year we awarded at 33.48% and above. And I'm not sure what this is going to look like or I should say next year, because it really depends on the schools that apply and the funding that we receive. And we're also required to do targeted outreach to schools with 50% or more free and reduced. So some of you likely received that email from me from a couple months ago, because this is an annual requirement that we have to do. And other criteria that's used in the awards process, I just wanted to include it here. So that includes late claims, low fund usage, and if we have concerns with other child nutrition programs. It's not an automatic disqualifier, but just additional factors that we use in the awards process. So it's another reason to check that usage report to see where you're at throughout the year as far as fund usage goes. And then I just wanted to leave you with some resources if you aren't already familiar. So the FFVP handbook really is the manual for the program and is a great resource and can probably address 99% of your questions. And all of these resources are available on the child nutrition webpage. So there's a fact sheet from USDA, a budgeting tool, and we also have other resources on our webpage as well. So that ends our presentation. So we'll see if we have if anyone has any questions.
No questions at the moment.
Okay, no questions right now. But if you do, please enter them in the Q&A box. All right, we're not seeing any questions. So thank you all for joining. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to call or email me. I have my contact information. And hope everyone has a great day.